This video is brought to you by DICE, the global entertainment content marketplace. If you're a regular movie watcher or a major film buff, chances are you've heard of Elijah Wood, whether it be from his debut in Back to the Future 2, his major leading role in the Lord of the Rings franchise, or his voice work in 9 and the Happy Feet franchise. Whilst most of his roles have gained a lot of traction, a few of his performances have slipped under the mainstream radar. Enter Day Zero, a film following three friends as they prepare to be drafted to fight against the war on terror, in which Wood takes a lead role as a lonely novelist, currently working on his second novel after the first receives moderate success. Wood isn't the only successful actor starring in this movie though, as he is supported by Chris Klein and John Bernthal, playing the supporting roles of his best friends, George and Dixon, respectively. Before we dive into the video, if you're a buyer looking to acquire Day Zero or any other titles on DICE, or you're a seller looking to get your own titles out to a global audience, you can get in touch with us through our website, connect.digital, or you can email us at dicesales@connectdigital.com. Spoiler alert, we will be covering major plot points in the film, so without further ado, let's explore Day Zero. As mentioned previously, Day Zero follows the personal journeys of three close friends as they find out that they have been drafted to serve in the Iraq War and have 30 days to report. In the beginning of the movie, once the trio have received their respective notices, they meet up to discuss their feelings amongst each other. This is the audience's introduction to the character archetypes, with Aaron being an awkward, shy, introverted creative, Klein being an intelligent lawyer who resents the current political climate, and Dixon being an archetypical masculine patriot, wanting to defend his country. Immediately, tensions begin to rise between Dixon and George, as the two have contrasting views when it comes to the war on terror. Aaron sits directly in the middle of the tension, as honestly, he's not really bothered by the politics of war, but more in his own well-being and mortality. This tension only gets worse throughout the movie, climaxing in one specific scene where Dixon punches George in the face after arguing with a few of George's close friends about the war. Despite this obvious tension and conflict, the movie does well in showing the characters for more than their archetypes, as George, after the fight, tells his wife Molly of a time where Dixon protected him at school from bullies without hesitation. We really see genuine compassion from George here, who has every right to dislike Dixon, and we begin to unravel Dixon's complex nature as a person, as he can be incredibly aggressive, but will always be loyal to his friends. This particular scenario plays out again later in the movie when George, in a fit of frustration, takes his anger out on a gay couple at a bar, resenting them as they don't have to serve whereas he does. This outburst results in him, well, being beaten up. Dixon comes to his aid when Aaron calls him, despite the unresolved tension between the two friends, really showing us Dixon's compassion and loyalty to those he loves. Aaron's journey through this movie is a little more lonesome than the other two. He airs his grievances on the matter to his therapist, who we can see is incredibly unprofessional and completely uninterested in Aaron's problems. She half-heartedly comes up with the idea of writing a list of 10 things Aaron wants to do before leaving, which he immediately becomes incredibly enthusiastic about. A good portion of Aaron's character development is centered around his undertaking of these 10 tasks. This can oftentimes be, well, kind of humorous, as we can see Aaron's persona make plenty of situations in the film rather awkward, especially when the concept of sex is involved. But nonetheless, he pushes through, and these experiences slowly bring out confidence in him, one by one. I feel his biggest character shift comes quite a bit later in the movie, when he pays a pimp to spend some time with one of his sex workers, to which he does, and when done, gets robbed by that same pimp. He calls up Dixon to help him out, as he's still too afraid to confront the man himself. Dixon comes to his aid without question, again showing Dixon's loyalty to his friends. But once he beats up the pimp and gets Aaron's wallet back, he flips out on Aaron. This is arguably my favourite scene in the entire film, as it gives a real sense of depth and dimension to Dixon's character. He is clearly emotionally troubled by the conflict of protecting his friends versus hating his violent side that exists within him. A very interesting observation is Aaron's lack of ability to understand or empathise with Dixon. It's very clear that Aaron just doesn't get it. Aaron's plot development takes a bit more of the spotlight here as we see him engage in some more out-of-character behaviours, from the likes of shaving his head and getting a huge tattoo, to smashing his laptop and talking to himself in the mirror. Dixon, on the other hand, finds himself falling for a love interest called Patricia throughout the movie, where he finds himself debating the desire to leave her behind. Despite this, she encourages him to stick to his core beliefs, giving him a sense of comfort and fulfillment. George, after having multiple outbursts, such as swearing at a client at work, drinking a lot, and even contemplating cutting his own hand off, has finally reached some resolve about his situation, seeming okay with the fact that he has to leave. But just when you think you have the characters figured out, the writers throw a ginormous twist into the plot near the end of the movie that's completely unexpected. This is something that Day Zero does really well, keeping the plot fresh whilst keeping the characters true to how real people would react in such a desperate situation. The performances given from the three main characters are honestly quite underrated, particularly Wood's performance of Aaron. Aaron begins as quite a likeable character, maybe even somewhat relatable to those of us that are introverted or awkward or, just lack a bit of confidence. Yet throughout the narrative, you see this initial facade fade away, as we begin to see Aaron for what he really is, a self-indulgent individual that has fractured relationships with those he's supposed to care about, as he's too caught up in his own world to notice the problems of other people. This shift though is quite subtle, rather than being dramatically thrown in your face at the middle of the movie without warning. Granted, some of the archetypes Aaron plays into are a little bit on the nose, particularly when the concept of sex is involved, but his character always feels believable as to how a human being would react in a tense situation. Bernthal's portrayal of Dixon really made sense. It felt like this role was made for him. At first, much like Aaron, his character exists as a generic preset of a patriotic American. But very quickly, we start to see the nuances of his character, which, out of the three, I had the most empathy for. Sure, he often falls into the stereotypical characteristics of a macho alpha male, but throughout the movie we're pulled behind the curtain to see his true motives. His neuroticism comes from a desire to protect the people he cares about, which is something that's shown within the scene where the trio confess the worst things they've ever done. He did not threaten to kill his father because of a burning desire for committing violent actions, nor is it really self-serving. He does this because he witnessed the damage his father did to his mother and hated watching her suffer. The scene where he flips out at Aaron for putting him in a violent situation really shows that he struggles between an intrinsic need to protect his friends, yet despises the part of him that is violent towards others, something that Aaron clearly didn't understand at all. Dixon's relationship with Patricia, though, is something I struggle to understand. Whilst to some extent it makes sense for someone as neurotic as Dixon to end up falling hard for a woman very quickly, their relationship moved far too quickly considering the time span of the narrative. At points, it really felt as though they'd been together for months, yet they had only known each other for about 2 or 3 weeks. Whilst I understand that this was necessary to move Dixon's plot development forward, I really found it kind of jarring to follow. Klein's representation of George falls a little behind in comparison to the other two characters, but is equally as important to the plot. George was, in all honesty, the character I expected to have the darkest past, or to be the most self-serving. Yet throughout the film, he proved to be quite the opposite. The first real insight we get into George's character is when he gets hit in the face by Dixon. In that situation, he really had every right to hate him and to cut him off entirely. But yet, when Molly criticises Dixon's character, George is very quick to defend him, showing real empathy and understanding towards his friend. George's desperation to get out of the situation is something the other two characters didn't share, which really highlighted the struggle he was going through all by himself. At first, the rationality seems quite self-indulgent, in that he wants to get out because he just doesn't want to serve. But as we begin to learn more about his wife, Molly, and the fact that she had cancer, we realise his motives aren't exactly selfish. He himself knows what it's like to face the fear of losing someone you really love, which is a feeling he never wants Molly to feel. He wants to be there to protect her and spend as much time with her as possible, as he almost lost her once before. Whilst George makes his fair share of mistakes in the film, whether it be his outburst in the gay bar or his confession on the tugboat, you feel a real sense of remorse and accountability from George. He knows what he's done wrong, and he takes responsibility for it, which is a character trait that is not often present in fictional characters. The depth of the three characters is something that shouldn't be overlooked, as it creates this sense of relatability to the audience, that it could be you in this situation. This is Day Zero's strongest asset, as sometimes the plot feels a little rushed or confused, but the relationship we develop with the characters is really what keeps the film interesting. What do you think of this video? Let us know down in the comments below. As always, you can get in touch with us through our website, connect.digital, or you can email us at dicesales@connectdigital.com for business inquiries. Be sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one. Have a great day.